Welcome everybody to both sides of the conversation. Thursday educational presentation tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. Tonight we have an amazing guest, one of our hidden gems, Brianna Phillips. She's coming back now to come teach us some business law, give us some games, some information that we need in our community. I know in this pandemic, there's a lot of changes in life. People are opening up businesses. People are starting to be more strategic with the layoffs and things that's happening. So tonight she's going to give us a great presentation, things that we need to know starting up a business. And she's going to have a lot of information for us in the community. So thank you guys for tuning in. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brianna so she can greet you and get ready for the presentation tonight with this amazing information for the community. So with that being said, Brianna, I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. Like you said, my name is Brianna Phillips. I am a licensed attorney in California, and I am the owner of Oakala Law Mediation Firm. Today, I'm just going to be talking about business law and trademark, but I'll pull up the PowerPoint right now so that we can also talk about some of the other areas that I practice. So here we go, 1 second. Okay, so I was raised in Fairfield, California. I just launched my virtual practice in November 2020. So that means I can help anyone in California since you wouldn't have to come into my office, which is good because COVID-19, right? So some of the areas that I practice other than the business law is intellectual property. That's going to include trademarks and copyright. So for any like music producers or artists, photographers, anything like that, I can also help with getting your copyrights. I do estate planning, which is help with your establishing your will and your trust, your whole estate plan, make sure that everything's all good. And then I do offer some personal injury services. So anything that falls into those 4 categories, I am available to help basically anyone in California, but anything that falls under intellectual property, I can help anyone nationwide. So that would be the copyrights and trademarks. So starting off, I'm just going to discuss the different type of business entities that there are and the different protections that they provide, because I know a lot of us are starting businesses, especially when COVID hit. I saw a lot of people starting up with their business, and sometimes we don't really know which type of entity to register under. So the first type of entity that I want to talk about is a sole proprietorship. It's kind of automatically formed as soon as you start having a business. You don't have to file with like the Secretary of State or anything, and you just can kind of work as your business. The thing about a sole proprietorship is that you're subject to liability, your personal assets and your business assets, if you were to get in trouble with someone. So if someone were to sue you for something that your business did, they can also come after like your house and your cars and all of that stuff. So sole proprietorship is basically like the least protection you can get. So that is why most people will go ahead and register like a LLC or a limited liability partnership or even a corporation. So general partnerships are similar to a sole proprietorship in that you don't have to register it with the Secretary of State, which is just saying that, hey, I'm a business entity operating in this state. But you do have the option to go ahead and register that partnership. Same thing with general partnerships. You're basically liable for anything that the partnership does. If your partner does something bad in the name of the partnership, or if your partner does something bad remotely in the name of the partnership, your personal house can also be liable for what they did. Like I said, you can register it with the state, but you don't have to. And you can also limit your liabilities with like a partnership agreement. Next protection would be limited liability partnership. So this is when you have one or more persons owning an entity. And this one you do have to file with the Secretary of State, and you have to go ahead and have that partnership agreement in writing so that you know what is going on. So this is generally, you're not generally personally liable for the things that your partnership does. So if your partner does something in the name of the partnership, basically only your business assets will be liable. But if you do something bad, kind of in the name of the partnership, then your personal assets can be liable. So basically, you're not completely immune from liability just because you say you have a limited liability partnership. That's the same thing even when you get a limited liability company. So everyone says, hey, I have an LLC, so I'm protected from everything, right? So I can't be sued, you can't take my house or anything like that. That's not necessarily true. Like, yes, you do have a limited liability company, but if you aren't acting as a limited liability company, then you can still be sued for your personal assets. So that's basically, let's say you have your LLC, but you never get a separate bank account. If someone was to decide to sue you and they found out that your business basically has zero assets, but you have like $100,000 in your personal business account, they're going to try to sue you personally and show the court basically that you're not really operating as an LLC, and they can do that. So what's important about the LLC is that you have an operating agreement and you're making sure that you're following that operating agreement so that these people cannot, what they call in court is pierce the corporate veil and say, hey, you're not really acting like an LLC, you're acting as an individual because you're commingling funds, you're not separating out your personal funds from your individual funds, or even you're filing taxes wrong. Let's say you say in your operating agreement that you're going to file the taxes as a sole proprietorship, but you're really filing it as a corporation. That is another reason to pierce that corporate veil. So it's very, very important that you have this operating agreement and that you're following it so that if you were ever to get in trouble and sued, you can show the court or the mediator or whoever that, hey, I really am an LLC, okay? I'm not pretending to be, okay? A corporation is the next form. You know, a lot of people probably aren't doing corporations. This is basically like the most protected entity that you can get, and there are a few different types. Basically, if you do anything, you're an officer of your corporation, you can't really get in trouble personally. You would have to be acting on your own. So, and the only reason why a corporation's assets will get in trouble is if like an officer or a director was doing something bad with the company. So the two different types of corporations, main ones are the S Corp, which is a smaller entity, and it's usually held by like family members or close friends. It's held by like a small amount of people. As you can see, you can only have 100 shareholders. And then corporations or C Corps are bigger. And these are the ones that are publicly held. So these are the ones that you see on the stock market. And they have so much more stricter upkeep. So basically you have to comply with meeting requirements, bylaw requirements, all of that. Same thing with the limited liability company. You have to have what's called the bylaws that the company has to follow to show that, hey, I am acting as a corporation. It's easier to pierce the corporate veil with a S Corp than it is for a C Corp. So if you want the most protection, it's going to be a corporation, but the most feasible for most small businesses are LLCs just because they're more accessible and easier to run, and they're not as strict as far as all these laws. And so this is just a chart of basically the least protection to the most protection in the different entities. So at the top is the single member. So these are the types of entities you can have if you're just one person, or even just an LLC owning a corporation. And then the bottom is for multi-member. So that's two or more people. So you can't be a partnership or a limited liability partnership with just one person. So these are the things that we need to consider when we're having our business. Pretty much all the same thing, no matter what type of entity you need, but in certain situations, you need it for different reasons, if that makes sense. So for a sole proprietorship, you're always, most of the time, you're going to want to get a DBA. So you basically don't need a DBA if you're operating under basically your last name. So for my instance, I'm like doing Phillips Law Firm. I wouldn't need a DBA for that. But if I was operating under, well, my law firm name, Oakala Law Mediation Firm, then I do need a DBA because people can't associate that with me because they don't know, like, that's not my last name. Same thing with a partnership. You don't really need it if you're using the last names of the people who run it. But if you're suggesting that there's more people in the partnership, so let's say you have Phillips, Jones and Associates, then you would need a DBA. And so a DBA is a fictitious business name. It's just letting the public know that you're operating your business under a different name than your personal name. Next thing is a business license. It can get confusing on the city websites of whether you need a business license or whether you not. Some cities say that you need it if you're in the unincorporated part of town or if you're not in the unincorporated part of town, and that just gets confusing. I just recommend that you get a business license no matter what, no matter if you are in the incorporated part of town or not. It can't hurt you. In most cases, it doesn't cost that much. While I'll talk about the fine in a little bit, the fine is a lot higher than what it counts or what it costs to just get the license. And Sacramento, it is $130 and Elk Grove is $16. So it just depends on what city you're in of how much your business license is going to cost. Another thing we have to make sure that we have are our permits. So specifically, I'm talking about your seller's permit, making sure that you are all okay with the tax board and selling these things. So you don't want to be out there selling without a seller's permit, or if you are doing food, you want to have the proper health permits. All of that, just to make sure that you don't get any fines, get in trouble for any other reason. Business bank accounts, also, again, like I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be commingling funds because that is like the ultimate show of showing them that, hey, I'm not really serious about my business. So I have one business account for my personal and for my business. This causes you trouble both with your taxes and if you were to get sued because you did something bad in your company. If you get audited by the IRS, they're going to say, hey, I can't tell what you're buying for your house and what you're buying for your business. So all of this is just taxable and you're getting fined for not reporting all of this, or you're getting fined for reporting too much of it. So that is why it's important to have a different bank account, separate from your personal bank account, separate line of credit, all of that. An EIN is your employer identification number. You basically need that, just get it if you're starting a business, whether you're a sole proprietor or a partnership or a corporation, because one, you're gonna need it if you have employees, and two, you wanna just have it to make sure that you can show even further when you open that bank account that you're separate than your personal. So you're not opening your bank account with your social security number, you're opening it with your EIN number. So you're showing them that, hey, I am serious about having a business. That's why I have this EIN number. So your EIN number is for your tax purposes. And it also like differentiates you from your business. Business insurance, of course, is not required in most businesses, but I always recommend that you get business insurance just because you don't want to have someone taking the money that you saved when you could have paid a couple of $100s for business insurance. So let's say you've been saving $20,000 up so that you can buy you a Porsche and put a big down payment on your Porsche, right? But then your business does something bad and now someone's suing you and they say, hey, you have $0 worth of business assets. I want to sue you for that $20,000 that you have for your Porsche. They're going to sue you for that $20,000 that you have for your Porsche, when if you would have just paid like a couple of $100s for business insurance, they would have just took if the thing that happened falls under your business insurance policy, they could just take the money from your policy and what you have to pay like $1,000 deductible. I think $1,000 versus $20,000 is a lot better, and you won't have to go resave or even get put out of business just because you didn't have business insurance. So it's always good to look into getting business insurance just in case anything happens. Is like so much safer just to pay a couple of $100s versus thousands and thousands of dollars. Like I mentioned earlier, you don't need to file your sole proprietorship or your partnership with the Secretary of State. It's just kind of automatically formed. You can do the partnership. If you try to do the sole proprietorship, they're not going to let you. You just can't file it with the state. So on the other side, the multi-person entities, all pretty much the same thing. You need a DBA only when you are indicating that there's more than one person, or even as an LLC, you can own another LLC. So in that moment, if you're an LLC owning another LLC, or being a manager or owning a corporation, then you would need a DBA for those situations. But everything else is pretty much the same. And then the difference here is that you need this operating agreement, and it's called different things depending on what type of entity you have. So if you have an LLC, it's called an operating agreement. If you have a partnership or a limited liability partnership, it's called a partnership agreement. And if you have a corporation, that's going to be your bylaws. And it basically just spells out all the rules of making any changes to your organization, or if you want to add something or remove something, how you're filing taxes, who's the owners, what's the purpose of your organization. It has all that information in there, and it's a private document. So you can really write whatever you want in there as long as you're going to follow those rules, and no one's going to see it unless you need to prove to the court that, hey, I followed my agreement. So it's a private document. It's not filed like with the state or anything like that. And you can make changes as your business grows. And then, like I said, all of these ones, they need to be filed with the Secretary of State. So this is where I'm talking about business license. This is why I said it's just better to go ahead and get the business license, because if you were supposed to have a business license and you didn't, it's going to cost you a fine of $500 versus that if you're in Sacramento County paying $130 and it lasts 5 years, right? A lot cheaper just to pay that, because it ends up being like a few, maybe $30 a year or something like that. I can't do math that fast. Then you have commercial. When you have a commercial business, you also need to make sure you have the proper licensing for that, whether it be like with your building permits and all of that stuff. And then also just letting us know that you are a commercial business. General business licenses usually like qualify for most types of businesses that there are. But there are some situations where you will need a special business license, such as if you're doing construction or you're selling tobacco or alcohol or things like that. You will need a special business license, which usually costs more and has like more regulations. Again, the seller's permit is really important. I feel like I keep needing to highlight this, and I'm going to talk about it on a whole slide coming up, is because there are a lot of people selling things like shirts and bundles and food and candles and everything like that. So if you're selling anything whatsoever that could have been taxed if you bought it from Walmart, then you need to have a seller's permit. The thing is that your seller's permit is completely free. So there is no reason why you should not have a seller's permit. There are occasions when they might charge you a deposit, and that's generally when you've been already selling stuff, but you never had a seller's permit before, so they'll charge you a deposit. But for the most part, a seller's permit is free. So if you're selling anything, you should have one. Even if you have the deposit, you should still have one, because that's already kind of a sign that you're heading towards trouble if you have to pay that deposit. Special licensing you have for tobacco, fuel, cannabis. I know that is a big popular thing that's coming up. You need special licensing to sell cannabis, electronic waste, things like that. There's also, you want to make sure that you're complying with the fire code and building code, all of that stuff. If you are like in a brick and mortar and people are coming to your business. So just make sure you have all those licenses and permits together. Like I said, I was going to talk about seller's permits a little bit more in detail. So basically, who's required to have this seller's permit? Basically, anyone who is selling any or releasing any personal property. So that's going to be anything that's subject to sales tax. Like I mentioned earlier, it'll be candles, food, anything that you would normally get taxed on at the store, jewelry, anything, you will be, you would need the seller's permit. This also includes if you're providing services which ends up creating something that is a personal property or tangible personal property. Like, let's say you're a jeweler, but you're making a custom ring. So you did the diamond, you shaped it and all of that stuff. You also melted the metal to make the ring part, put it all together, and then you sold it. That would be considered you're selling a good that would need to be taxed. So you would need a seller's permit, even if you're providing those types of services. This applies to every type of business entity, whether you're a corporation, partnership, sole proprietorship, LLC, whether you're the wholesaler or the retailer, you need the seller's permit. No matter, just get a seller's permit if you're selling anything, basically. If you're selling anything for less than 90 days, you can get a temporary seller's permit. So that is something to think about. So let's say you don't sell things all the time, like Christmas tree people, they don't sell things all years around, right? So they will only need a temporary seller's permit. Just make sure you get the permit. To apply for the seller's permit, you're gonna go to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration. If you're not in California, you probably need to go to your state's tax board and just go ahead and file for it. I don't know what the cost is there, but I know as far as California is, there's no fee there unless they have some issue with you and you'll have to pay a deposit. And then, of course, check the tax website for any type of sales tax and anything like that. I wanted to touch on food services today, just because I do see a lot of people selling plates out of their houses and all of that stuff. So I didn't want to go ahead and touch on that because right now it's not okay in the area that I'm in, even though I'm still seeing it. So you will find your food service regulations on your county's website. Make sure, like I said earlier, that you have the health permit in order if you're selling food to the public. This applies for cooked food or prepackaged food. And you cannot sell or prepare food from your home unless it falls under the cottage food operation. So this applies to all of California. You can sell food from your home, and I'm going to show you the list of what kind of food it is, but it's basically food that cannot be potentially hazardous. So the example is if you dropped it in the couch and it stayed there for 3 months and you ate it, it would not be okay to eat. So basically anything that you're cooking, you can't really have it. And even when you're selling these things out of your home, you have to pay, you can't make more than $50,000. Once you start making more than $50,000, you're required to get some type of establishment or kitchen to do this. And then the price varies depending on what type of who you're selling it to. So basically, if you're selling it just straight to consumers, then the fee is lower, as you can see. And if you're selling it to consumers and third parties, so like, let's say you're selling it to a grocery store and to people directly, then you will pay a higher fee and a renewal fee. And this is the prices for Sacramento. Oops. So this is the approved list. And so as you can see, it's not the people that are posting like fried fish plates, barbecue plates that they're selling out of their house. These are things that people are not making often, like dried fruits and dried pastas, cotton candy. Maybe people make candied apples for like their dessert business, but basically these are not things that we're normally selling. As you can see, like it can have nothing that can expire. Like even if you're selling frosting, it can't have like eggs, milk, and things like that in it. We don't want anyone, the point of it is that they don't want anyone getting sick. So they're trying to limit people selling things, food, consumable things out of their house. There is this new thing that came out in the beginning of 2020 called the California Microenterprise Home Kitchen Operations, and that applies in some other states. They also have this too, but California did approve it, but it's up to your county or city to allow it. So in Sacramento County, it's not currently allowed. In Placer County, it's not currently allowed. I checked Sacramento City and all the cities around, not currently allowed. And I don't know if it's just because it's new and they just haven't implemented it yet, but right now it's not allowed. And it could vary depending on different counties. These are just the counties that I usually deal with. So these are the ones that I know about. And the same thing, even when it gets approved or if it is approved in your area, can't sell more than $50,000. and you can't sell more than 60 plates a week. So once you start selling more than $50,000 worth of food a year, then you're gonna have to get a commercial kitchen. They wanna limit just selling food out of your house. The cost of this is about $800, including that insurance that I told you guys was really important. And people think, hey, I'm selling it out of my house. I'm not gonna get in trouble. I'm not gonna get caught or whatever. But the reality of the situation is that you're selling it online. So you can get caught. And if you do get caught, it is a misdemeanor. And so that will be punishable by $25 to $1,000, and or you can go to jail for 6 months. Or up to 6 months. So, and this is per violation. So let's say they decided to charge you the $1,000 and you had 80 violations because they went down your Instagram and figured out which ones you sold on what days you sold. That's $80,000 basically. Not saying they'll charge the whole price, but those are the type of penalties we're looking at if your county is not allowing you to sell food out of your home. So it may change soon because that did just get approved. So we'll just have to wait to see when it's going to be allowed. So I want to move on to trademarks. What is a trademark? Basically, the trademark is protection, it's intellectual property, and it's basically protection of you using something like your brand name to distinguish your products or your services from someone else. So we'll take Walmart and Target for an example. Everyone knows, or most people know what Walmart and Target is. They know the type of service that they're going to get if they go to Target. They know what type of service they're going to get if they go to Walmart. Everyone has, or not everyone, some people have their preferences. For me, for instance, I'm going to go to Walmart because I like to save that extra $1 or $2, sometimes $4. But then there are other people like my sister who's going to go to Target because she likes the bouginess and she likes the cleanliness and the organization that is in Target. I know if I go to Walmart, I'm going to have to wait 20 minutes for someone to come unlock my hair products. You don't have that problem at Target. That's why you're probably paying more. You don't have those same issues, right? But still, people know those names because those are their trademarks. They're selling you your experience with them, right? So that makes it so much more valuable because think about it. If Walmart also had the same type of customer service as Target, then it will be a harder decision of which one to go to, and they wouldn't have a select clientele base, basically. So having that trademark is important because you're establishing credit with your consumers, and that's everything. If those stores are blanking, you didn't know which one to go into, you wouldn't have a preference. You wouldn't spend more money at one or the other because you wouldn't know which one is which, right? So why get a trademark? You want a trademark to protect yourself from copycats. And this is for bad things and good things, right? Let's say you started a t-shirt line and you make your t-shirts out of pure silk and you named your t-shirt line Imperial, and people know that when they go to Imperial, they're gonna get pure silk shirts and they're wonderful, right? You started making a lot of money. You got a lot of followers on Instagram. People are buying your stuff, but then your neighbor down the street, Bob, sees that you're making all this money. So at first you were driving a Toyota, now you're driving a Mercedes. Now Bob wants what you have. So Bob starts his own t-shirt company and he names it Imperial, which is pretty close to your name, right? But he only sells semi-silk shirts. Now people are starting to go to his website and his Instagram and everything before yours because they're confused. They don't know the difference. They're just buying that one because his is the first one that pops up. So that's good. That's going to be bad either way around because one, he's making money off of you, and two, he can tarnish your name. Let's say he's selling shirts, but the quality is not as good. People are going to get mad, and now they're writing bad reviews on your website, even though they might have bought it from his website. So now you're getting bad reviews on things that you didn't provide, or even just losing the money from him. You don't want to lose money that you could have gotten and also provided that good service. So trademark protects you from copyrights because you can go ahead and sue them, which is the next thing is a defense or a basis for infringement case. So you have a basis if Bob is doing that, you can, hey, wave your trademark paper at him and say, hey, stop doing that, stop selling it, it's too close to mine, and you owe me money for the money that you have made off of my business. Or it could be a defense. Bob comes to you and say, hey, you stole my trademark name, because Bob never registered his trademark. And you say, no, I had mine registered first. And you can see on here that I started using mine first. So no, you lose, go away. I'm not giving you any money. So that's the good thing about having a trademark. It establishes the date that you use. You don't have to try to go back years and years and years to prove when you started using the mark to show that you were using it first, because you have the trademark. But if you didn't have the trademark, let's say you started your business in 2003, do you really have all those documents from 2003, or maybe a website from 2003? Probably not. You don't have those pictures of that website, right? So it provides you a basis and a defense. Is good because you just kind of establish like, hey, this is kind of indisputable and indisputable, and then the other person has to prove why your trademark is wrong or whatever. So their burden to win becomes tougher. So it's better for you. And like I said earlier, it establishes recognition and goodwill. We know that when we go to Target, there's going to be more than 2 cash registers open during the holiday season. When we go to Walmart, we don't really know if that's going to happen. There might only be 2 cashiers, right? So it establishes that goodwill. If I want to get through these lines faster, I should go to Target. If I want it to be a little more organized, I should go to Target. If I don't really care about that stuff and I just want to save a few bucks, I'm going to go to Walmart. And so it establishes that goodwill. It also establishes authentication. So you know when you go to Louis Vuitton, you're buying a bag that is leather, and you're not going to go test it because you feel like they have already done that. You don't feel the need to go and test their quality of their product because you know what it is, right? You know, if you buy that Imperial shirt from yourself, Imperial, then it's going to be pure silk because they've already done their due diligence and made sure that it was authentic, right? Or just anything. And then also to avoid rebranding, and avoiding rebranding meaning saving money. So rebranding happens when you're using a mark, you didn't really research it, and then someone comes after you and say, hey, stop using that because that is mine. So now let's say you did Imperial and you invested $10,000 in these silk shirts and you already printed Imperial across the chest. And they told you to stop and you can't fight it. And so now you have to stop. Now you wasted $10,000 on this shirt. If you want to continue your business, you're going to have to buy $10,000 more of silk shirts and then print the new brand on it, remarket it to everybody, spend more money advertising, explain to your customers like why you're not using that name anymore, whatever excuse you come up with if you don't want to tell them that, you know, you had to rebrand because of infringement. That is a whole lot of time, a whole lot of money, and a whole lot of headache. And then you also become that intellectual property holder. Like I said earlier, your followers are worth money. I don't know if you've ever tried to say, hey, can you give me a shout out on your page to someone with 1 million followers? They're going to charge you. Someone with 10,000 followers are going to charge you to go ahead and promote your things because those followers, that account is worth something. That's why you're even asking them to promote your stuff, unless they're like your BFF. But if they're not your BFF and you're just asking a random person to promote your stuff, you know that has value. Even with copyrights too, you are a famous painter and all of your paintings are worth $1 million. Someone knows you have that talent in your brain and they're going to pay you more money to make them something versus someone who you don't really know. So being an intellectual property owner has its benefits. What can be trademarked, right? So I have a lot of people come up to me and say, or call me and say, hey, I need a patent. And I'm just in there like, I don't do patents. What do you need a patent for? And they're saying, oh, I need it for my business name. And I'm like, no, you don't need a patent. I can actually help you. It's a trademark. Patent, for those of you who don't know, is things that are like inventions or something, like you made a machine that no one has ever made before and you don't want anyone copying it, or maybe you made a pharmaceutical drug Those are what you would need a patent for, is like a lot of scientific stuff. Trademark and copyright is more of the lane of what most people need if you're not an inventor or a pharmacist or a scientist, right? So trademarks, you can trademark your logo, your slogan, and your brand name. So brand name will be Nike and the slogan is "Let's do it." Yeah, you can trademark your tagline. You can also trademark trade dress. It's a little harder to do and most people don't do it, but it is possible to go ahead and do it. And so you can do product design, product packaging, restaurant design, like you go into every Chick-fil-A, it's the same. Every Chipotle is the same. They have the same type of theme if it's not the exact same size. Pretty much when you go into these places, they pretty much are set up the exact same way. So that is what your trade dress is going to be. You can also trademark colors, smells, and sounds, but not a lot of people do that. Most things that you're going to see being trademarked is your brand name, your slogan, your logo. But those things are trademarkable if you can come up with something super unique. So trademark process, a lot of people get confused when you say, hey, the trademark process is going to take 8 to 12 months on average. The trademark process is really, really long. And so if you want to have your trademark by next year, you need to start today because it's going to take you till next year most of the time to get it done. So this is just the process. Is your trademark search and then you file the application, right? And this is where a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to go to LegalZoom because the attorneys are too expensive. So they go to LegalZoom. LegalZoom is not going to do that trademark search for you. They don't care if someone else is out there using that name. They really do not care. They're going to file it anyways, and you're going to waste your money. If you're going to go to your attorney, they're going to do that search for you, and they're going to warn you if there's a potentially filing or opposing mark. So let's say we went ahead and filed our application on our own or with LegalZoom, and you get this objection here, which 83% of trademark applications get rejections. Most people's applications die at that point because most people do not know how to respond to an office action. It's a legal argument. So even if you go to your friend and they're a personal injury attorney, they're still probably not going to know how to respond to it because they don't know what the examining attorney is looking for. So it's best to go ahead and get a trademark lawyer that does this on a regular basis. If you get an office action and you go with some type of system like LegalZoom or there's some other trademarking services that are like low cost, when you get the office action, they're going to hand it to you and say, so what are you going to do now? Do you want to file another one? You basically just wasting money because if you don't know how to respond to it, then there's basically nothing else you can do. Or there's something you can do. You can go try to hire an attorney to fix it for you. But if you don't want to do that, you don't want to pay that money, your application dies right there. And then your application on the USPTO website is just going to say dead. It's not alive anymore. So most people's applications die at that point. But let's say you go on and let's say you don't get an office action or you have an attorney and they respond to that office action, it'll go on to publication. And then while it's publicized, people can oppose the mark. So even though you pass the examining attorney, Bob down the street may come back and say, no, I don't want her to register that because I've been using Imperial first and it's too close to my name. And so that could stop your application too. Let's say it passes all of that and then your trademark is finally registered. It takes some time for the examining attorney to respond to you, and then all of it just takes time. So the typical time frame is 8 to 12 months to get your trademark approved. If it get approved, it's not a guarantee that your trademark will be approved for various reasons, whether it's confusingly similar to someone else, or it may be too geographically descriptive. It's a lot, and you would want to talk to someone about it to determine like if it's a good idea or if you should just change your name before you even start the headache, right? And so this is just a more complex version of the trademark process. There is an even more complex version of it if you're filing the application and you're not using your trademark yet. So I'm going to talk a little, I'm going to trademark strength. So another reason why your trademark may be denied is if it's not strong enough. So basically generic, there's different terms for it. So generic is basically like if you're literally using the name of what you're trying to register. Like you have a red apple and you named your company Red Apple, you're not going to get a registration for that. It gets stronger as you get more weird, okay? So the harder it is to figure out what you're selling, the more likely you're going to be able to get a trademark. So I'm going to go into arbitrary. That is basically when you're using a word to describe your service or your product that is not normally used for that thing. So for example, Apple selling electronic products. An apple is a fruit, so calling the electronic product an apple is completely different. So that is why they would be able to register that pretty easily, right? Fanciful is something that you basically just make up out of thin air because you want it to. That is going to be things like Google. Google was not a word before Google made Google, right? Kodak was not a word before Kodak made Kodak. So if you make it up, you're more likely to go ahead and get it registered. You're not going to, most likely not going to get rejected because your mark is not strong enough. So those are other considerations to think about when you have a trademark. A lot of people ask, when should I file my trademark? I say ASAP, or think about getting a trademark ASAP. Even before you start printing on your t-shirt, you want to make sure that nobody else, one, has a trademark for it, and two, no one else is using it. Because even if they don't use it, they could, or even if they don't have a trademark, they can still sue you because they have a common law trademark rights. And those are not as strong, but they could still sue you, okay? So I keep saying use if you're using it, The trademark office requires that you're using it in commerce, which means you're using it in connection with whatever you're selling, whether it be a service or a product. And you can show that by selling stuff on Instagram, selling stuff on a website, anything that people know that you're using that. You're not gonna have a letterhead and say, see, trademark office, I am using it. They're gonna say, no, no one can see your letterhead. You haven't sent out any letters. So that doesn't really count, right? And so I say trademark it as soon as you start using it, or right before you start using it. You should be talking to an attorney, and then you should start using it, and the attorney should file your trademark for you. You can wait longer. Some marks do require you to wait longer. I mentioned, I didn't mention it, but there's a descriptive mark that would require you to wait longer. So that's basically you're describing something, but you can you're basically describing it and people kind of know what you're talking about, like a fluffy or like a plush, you know, it's going to be like cotton filled something, right? Might be deemed descriptive, and you can usually register that after like 5 years to show distinctiveness. So basically to file a trademark, you have to show that it's distinctive or different, and people will be able to like distinguish it from other things. And then you can also file what I mentioned a little bit earlier was the intent to use application, which means you're not using it yet, but you think it's a really, really good name and you think someone's going to steal it by the time you'll be able to launch your business. So you can file what's called an intent to use trademark, and it basically will give you the rights back to the date that you file. But it's more expensive because you will keep having to file. If you're not ready, you will have to keep filing extensions. And then when you're finally ready, then you have to file like that, my mark is now in use. So it ends up being like an application fee plus a couple of extension fees, and then I'm using it fee. So it typically adds up pretty quickly because it's pretty much every 6 months. And then you're limited to doing that for 3 years. So I say if you're not planning on using it within the next 6 months to a year, then don't file the intent to use application because it's going to get really expensive. But if you do, you have about 3 years to go ahead and get your products up and running. I know I mentioned LegalZoom a little bit earlier, and so I just wanted to kind of break out what's the difference between LegalZoom. Like, of course, LegalZoom is always way cheaper. I'm just using LegalZoom because I feel like a lot of people are familiar with it. There are other services that provide things like Rocket Lawyer and things like that. But basically, any type of program like that is what I'm comparing it to. If you get an attorney, which I highly recommend, even if it's not me, just make sure you get a trademark attorney. The trademark attorney is going to provide you with that research to let you know, like, hey, if you file this application, it may be a waste of money because there are these marks that may be trouble for you. You may have to fight against that one. It's going to cost you a little bit more money because you're going to have to fight. And you may decide, hey, I want to fight. And you can completely do that. You can fight. Just make sure you have someone that's able to fight it for you. We're going to analyze the strength of the mark. If you're coming in here saying, hey, I want to register red apples to sell my red apples, we're going to tell you, no, you're not going to do that. That would be a complete waste of your money and it's never going to happen. So we're going to let you know that type of stuff. While those other programs, they're not even going to say anything to you about it. They're going to say, you like red apples, selling red apples, let's go ahead and do it, right? Then we have, we'll strategize if there are potential marks. So like I said, opposing potential marks. Like I said, you might decide, hey, I still want to go ahead and register no matter that these other marks are similar. We can come up with a strategy and let you know like how long you could probably expect the fight to be, the likelihood of you succeeding on the fight, and then what approach we're going to take. And that especially happens after the office action come, which I don't know if I really explained what an office action is. It's basically the USPTO refusing to register your mark, and then you have a few months to respond to it. If you don't respond to it, your mark is basically dead. And so if you wanted to still pursue that one, you would have to file a new trademark. So it's mostly done when you get that office action, because it's no guarantee to figure out what those examining attorneys are thinking, because sometimes you think they might refer to one mark and then they don't, but they refer to something else. So that strategizing comes at the beginning, and then also when that office action comes in. Like I said, 83% of trademark applications get that office action. And then you get support throughout the registration process. You won't have to worry about communicating with an examining attorney or trying to catch the examining attorney that's just been missing in action forever. Your attorney will deal with that if that's what they provide in their package. And then we have that knowledge regarding those office actions. Like I said, if you talk to your friend that's a personal injury attorney and that's all they do is personal injury, they're gonna look at you pretty crazy if you say, hey, can you respond to this examining attorney for me? They're gonna be like, what is that? So you don't want to, you wanna go with someone that knows about trademark law. And then you're gonna get professional recommendations throughout the process. You are going to be told like, hey, this is a bad idea, but it's your money. If you want to go with the bad idea, I'll argue it as much as I can. But just to let you know, this is not a good idea. Versus, like I said, with those other programs, they're not going to tell you anything. Once you get that office action, they're going to say, here you go. Do you want to file something else? And they're not really going to help you. And then you're going to have to go to an attorney to fix it anyways. If you're going to do that, you might as well just file it on your own instead of you using LegalZoom, right? Okay, so that was my spiel on trademarking and not using LegalZoom and everything else. Here is my contact information. If you have any questions for me, I can be found on Instagram at Oakala Law, Facebook at Oakala Law 1, and then my email, phone number, and everything.
All right. Great presentation. I'm looking in the group chats. You kind of answered the LegalZoom question. I think I only had one comment about LegalZoom. They basically was asking it wouldn't be a good resource to start a business with it through them. So she just gave you the spiel. My thing is this, you guys, we hear on both sides of the conversation. You guys that's in our group, you understand what we're promoting here. We always promote supporting our Black and brown businesses. We have a sister here. You have somebody in the network now that can help you. Why would you want to call LegalZoom? Why would you want to call anybody else? We want to support our Black and brown community, and this is what we're doing. The sister is here, the Oakala Law Firm. Do you do the whole California, or I don't want people to think you just in Sacramento? Can you kind of go over some of the areas you cover in California, or do you do stuff outside of California?
Yeah, so the only things that I do outside of California, which also includes inside of California, is going to be the trademarks and the copyrights. The things that I can help anybody with throughout California, whether it's Southern California, Northern California, is going to be all that business law, including like forming your entities, doing your contracts, anything that has to do with your business, the legality of your business, I can help out with that. And then I have estate planning, which will be your wills and your trust, everything that you need to have your estate plan in order. And then I also do personal injury, but that not too much too far out, but I can help even if it's further out in California.
And yeah, we blessed to have you. And I know we have some upcoming things in the future that you're going to put on for the community for some of the other practices that you cover. So I think that's going to be helpful. But again, you guys, let's get behind and support this business. You know, she's doing amazing things here in California. I know with the pandemic, like I said earlier, people are looking for ways to start up businesses. The unemployment numbers are starting to creep up a little bit. People are panicking with the second wave of COVID and the shutdown, laying people off. I know a lot of people have great ideas. We have a lot of nonprofits in the community starting up, have a lot of people starting up small businesses. She gave you an amazing breakdown to understand the difference between sole proprietorship and corporations. The information was phenomenal tonight. I mean, again, I'm looking for questions and I'm not really seeing a lot. So again, that means it was a great presentation is what I found. When there's a lot of questions, I think the presenters is not getting the information, but we had a couple of sisters come on here, do a phenomenal job of laying out the information to the community. And I think it's, you know, when it's laid out like that, we have less questions it seems, but we're definitely going to replay it for the community, for people who missed it. I know it's Thursday night football. Some people engaged in football, but I'm glad you came on today because I was on a couple of calls today and I was in a group talking about you know, financial literacy and these type of topics that you were talking about was things that the community needed. And, you know, tonight you was able to present that for the community. So I'll definitely be able to share that to the network, different people, and hopefully we can get your phones ringing. I'm sure people might have some questions or some people in that process. And definitely we want to make sure that we protected people. We don't want to just start a business just to make money. We want to make sure that we can build sustainable businesses in the Black and brown community. We want to make sure we can keep it long-term and pass it on to our children and grandchildren for generational wealth. But we want to make sure that we follow all of the legal stuff so we don't get into legal trouble. And definitely reaching out to a sister like that to make sure that you covered, make sure that you're doing the things that you need for your business. And that's just good information because I'm on Instagram a lot. I see a lot of people selling foods and different dishes, you know, the mobile food company, but no license or nothing.
Right.
And definitely, you know, with the COVID and the times we're in, we want to make sure people are licensed, following the state guidelines to make sure that we, you know, selling great food or whatever products that we're selling, that it meets the guidelines so that your business could thrive. Because all it takes, like you said, one person to say something bad and you don't have the license, it could cause you a world of trouble trying to get off the ground. And we don't want that to happen. We want to see our businesses and our community succeed and be sustainable. So I think that was an amazing presentation. I was going to ask a couple questions and you covered it on the trademark end. I know some of the other stuff that we have coming up in the future. I'm not gonna let that out. We can have those conversations. But again, just want to thank you again for coming on, doing this presentation. I think this was very intentional and I think it was very laid out for the community. You gave it to us in the ABC order. It was very straightforward. And I think most people tonight or when they watch this will be able to take some information from that and hopefully reach out to you for any of their business needs. So thank you again, sister, and looking forward to some of the other things you have coming up for the community. Just want to thank you. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here at both sides of the conversation is be intentional, educating the community. And, you know, sometimes community feel like leaders of our community that climb the corporate ladder, start doing amazing things, forget to reach back. And, you know, just want to commend you because, you know, you could easily said no. And you definitely care about your people. So as people, we need to care about people who care about us and support businesses like this because the only difference from us closing the gap financially is with the information. And sometimes our community, we miss the information and that's why we get held back. So again, thank you for coming on. As we wrap this up, I just want to let everybody know this Sunday, we are having an amazing Sunday conversation. We're going to have San Francisco District Supervisor Matt Haney coming on. We're going to have an in-depth conversation with him. It should be amazing. It'll be interactive. We can ask some questions. And I think you guys will, that's in the San Francisco area. He has a lot of things that he's put legislatively on the table. He has a lot of amazing things that he's been trying to do. And I think working with some of the other supervisors, we can definitely have some of the conversations that we've been talking about and how on implement things and how do we get some of our policies pushed. And maybe this conversation, we can open up some dialogue and some information to help him out. So that'll be this Sunday for our Sunday conversation. And then the following Tuesday, we're going to have special guests. We'll give you that information. I kind of let it out the bag earlier, but we're going to wait for Tuesday. We're going to have two special guests for our next Hidden Gem segment. And then next week, we'll have one more Educational Thursday. And then that'll be the last Educational Thursday to the end of the year. And then we'll re-kick it off after the new year as we get ready for the holiday season. Most of the holidays are falling on Thursdays, but we still will be having our Sunday conversations after the holiday. But definitely all the Educational Thursdays will be shut down for the holidays for Christmas and New Year's. And we'll still have our Hidden Gem shows before the holidays. So definitely be looking forward to that, tuning in. And then the following Sunday, you guys know from last Sunday, we had the Black Dad experience. That conversation was amazing. We talked to the Black dads in the community, talking about some of the challenges and some of the experiences that they've dealt with while parenting. On December 20th, it is going to be the time for our mothers to talk about the mother experience of raising children, some single, some co-parenting, some married. I think it's going to be a great conversation. We have amazing sisters that will come on and help facilitate this conversation and make sure that we hone in on the key points. And then the Sunday after Christmas, we're going to have a joint conversation with the males and the females of the community and really talk about strategically, how do we make change, parenting and co-parenting, and how do we come up with some things to help heal the community and our Black and brown community when it comes to co-parenting and trying to raise our kids and making sure that the experience is great for the children and it's great for the parents as well. And I think that's going to be an amazing conversation. So looking forward to that. And before we leave, just want to thank everybody from our Both Sides of the Conversation staff for all the hard work that they're doing behind the scenes, putting these presentations together, making sure that our community is getting this information. It is a challenge. They're doing so many things behind the scenes, setting up for our mentoring program, getting ready to launch for next year, and just a lot of amazing things. So we just definitely want to highlight them for keeping the train rolling, making sure that our guests are getting all the information they need and coming on and reaching out to the community and making sure that we are pushing information to the community. So we want to thank you for them, and then keep a prayer out for our co-founder as well. We always want to make sure that we have not only prayers for him, but for the community in this COVID time. So please be safe out there, you guys. Wear your mask. And I have a few people that's willing to take their vaccine on our show when they come. So we got some community guinea pigs that want to get the virus, so get the vaccine. So that should be something interesting in the future. I told a couple of them if they do it, I guess I'm gonna have to do it to be a leader of the community, because we want to definitely end this COVID. And these numbers are spiking every day. So thank you guys for tuning in. See you guys on Sunday. We'll be talking with Matt Haney, San Francisco District 6 Supervisor. So looking forward to seeing you guys this Sunday. Have a good evening. I hope this information was great, and we'll be replaying it in the chats. Thank you, Brianna, for coming on. And looking forward to doing some other stuff with you in the future.